What up, everyone? Welcome to fanbold.com. I am Bevan, and today I am geeking out with Fangirls creator Yve Blake. It is a new musical down in Australia. It has a brand new cast recording. So let's go find out the BTS behind Fangirls, shall we?
This musical I've written, Fangirls, I came to the research as someone who, as a teenager, had been very skeptical. Like, I hadn't really embraced any fandom. I'd been really careful, and I think it was because of my own internalized misogyny that, like, oh, I'm cooler than that. That's not cool. And so at the age of 21, meeting a 13-year-old girl who's so into One Direction that she kind of gave me a talking to, was the catalyst, was my jumping off point for going, like, the anecdote I always tell is I met this 13-year-old girl who told me she'd met the man she was going to marry. And I said, wow, that's very organized. Tell me about him. And she said, his name is Harry Styles. And I laughed at her and she said, don't laugh at me. I love him so much. I'd slit someone's throat to be with him. So she fulfilled that trope of, I guess an insane, stop at nothing young fangirl. She ticked all the boxes for someone who has that assumption about what fangirl culture is. And she also was a young girl. And so she also fulfilled my assumption that obsessing over boy bands was the dominion specifically of adolescent women. So I went into researching this with so many preconceptions and assumptions. And as soon as I started researching, and what started as One Direction fans but totally exploded, all of my assumptions were obliterated. And I had this huge moment of going, oh my God, my whole life I have never questioned the fact that if I see an image of a young woman screaming her lungs out, say at a Justin Bieber concert, words I would reach for, that anyone I know might reach for, are words like hysterical and crazy and over the top, psycho, a bit much, insane. But if you take the same image and you make it a young man at a sporting event, then the words we reach for are words like devoted and passionate, and we'd say, that's the love of the game. You'd say, he's committed. And so I became obsessed with that. And so this is a huge tangent I've gone on, but all of this is to say I am a guest. I am a guest I have come as a fascinated writer, and my fear, of course, in writing this is that people who have been fans from the jump, have always gone hard for what they loved, haven't suffered from the skepticism that I have, that they would see this work that is for them and celebrating them, and they'd be like, that's not it.
Before we keep going, I want you to give me the Star Wars scroll of what Fangirls is.
So Fangirls, as I've said, it's a musical. And I've said, what I was seeking to do is vindicate teenage girls, but I decided to design the whole thing like a Trojan horse. So a story that appears to make fun of these girls only to really draw you in. And the story of Fangirls is that it's about Edna. She's 14. She's wickedly smart. She's actually on a scholarship to a rich all-girls private school where she doesn't fit in. But the good news is she's found two best friends. But the bad news is that it's the start of what in Australia we call year 9. So I guess it's 9th grade over there. And her friends have decided that she needs to grow up because she is still so obsessed with Harry from True Connection, the world's biggest boy band. And she outwardly believes they're going to be together. And this is so embarrassing to her friends because they're like, we need to grow up. Everyone in the year is moving on, and they're starting to get boyfriends, and the paradigm is shifting in terms of and they live in a very kind of heteronormative paradigm, these kids. So they tell Edna she needs to grow up, and that means that her two best friends have turned against her. Not only that, but her mum is really on her back about being so obsessed with Harry, and she should be focused on her scholarship. What if she loses it? So Edna, everything is up against Edna, but Edna has this clarity in her head, which is that she will be with Harry because she's not just another fan. She's the only person in the world that understands how Harry truly feels, and that is depressed. She believes he's deeply overworked in the boy band that he's in, and he needs saving. And she and her online best friend, Salty Pringle, who is an incredible fan fiction author, just like Edna, together have this shared conspiracy that Harry is depressed and needs to be set free. Then, like an act of God, Harry's band announced that they are going to tour to Edna's city, which is in Australia. They've never toured there. This is huge. Edna has to stop at nothing to get a ticket to the concert. And so she does so. She gets a ticket to the concert involving blackmail. So now she's got a ticket to the concert. She's so excited. She's got a way that she can save Harry. She just needs to figure out how the hell do you meet someone like that at a concert. So she contacts Salty and she's like, I've got this great idea for a fic. It's about a fan who saves Harry, meets him at a concert. Salty's like, are you drunk? No one's ever going to meet Harry at a concert. But then Salty figures out there is one way that a fan could meet Harry at a concert. They always sing to a girl in that one song, which we've totally set up. The only problem is that girl has to have cancer. So Edna considers it. She's like, do I fake having cancer to get on stage? Well, I'm going to be saving Harry's life, so it's probably worth it. So Edna's got it all figured out, but then she goes to school the next day and something is off. And it is revealed to her that her friend, who she blackmailed into getting a ticket, has retaliated by getting a ticket for everyone but her. And it's like,
so mean.
Oh, it's big, right? The
That's
deadline's
big.
passed though. Like the concert is now sold out. Her mum got the tickets at 10 a.m. There are no more left. They're all on eBay for $1,000. Edna's locked out. So Edna spirals. We see her socially isolated and we're like, oh God, it's all going wrong for her. And then we see, I'll be delicate with this, so the trigger warning, but we see signs that indicate maybe she's going to hurt herself and it's like really bad. But then the twist at the end of Act 1. Oh, should I keep it spoiler free?
Yeah, so you should do spoiler free because I want people to go listen to the soundtrack because I went in listening not knowing what was going to happen. I didn't read the plot or anything, but I listened to the inside. Yeah, I didn't know what was going to happen.
Well, all I'll say is for the listeners, she doesn't hurt herself. She does something very ingenious. And and Act 2 is just a whole new world for Edna. And it's basically the concept is what happens if you make a show where in the first act it's teenage girls acting like everything is life or death, and in the second act things kind of are life or death. And what happens if you make a musical with blockbuster stakes that surely anyone, including like my skeptical 7-year-old dad, can come and watch and be like, hey, this is funny and interesting, but can also get a room full of people to really empathize with a group of young women who are largely ridiculed for how they feel normally. So that was the goal there.
Right. And now, listeners, you can listen to the entire soundtrack. I listened to it on Spotify. That's where I found it. Where else can you find the recording?
Apple Music, bit of YouTube, other streaming services I don't know the names of. But yeah, we're out there.
That is awesome. And what, did the pandemic, oh my gosh, we have to mention here that we didn't mention, we mentioned offline that you are in a lockdown again right now.
Oh my gosh, yes, it's wild. So I'm currently in Melbourne, and Melbourne is about to go into its 5th lockdown. I usually live in Sydney. I'm here on a break, and they've got into, this is the second lockdown they've gone into while I've been here. In theory, it's for 5 days, but we'll find out.
So how has the pandemic affected the Fangirl course and where you've charted and stuff like that?
It's really interesting because we premiered right at the end of 2019.
Okay.
2 back-to-back seasons that were our premiere seasons, 5 weeks each. And then we were going to return in 2020 for a national tour, and obviously we didn't do that till 2021. So I think in a strange way, it gave me this extra bit of incubation time to really think about it. And in the first seasons, I played the lead role and then got the clarity that was a privilege that I was done with. I didn't want to do that again. Okay. So what was great is I actually, it meant that I hadn't seen the show, right? I'd been on stage every night. So having that extra year to really think about it, I think was really helpful. And then it's interesting because we did a tour of Australia this year, and I just think we're so lucky because we went from January to May, and with the map we were doing, we missed any COVID flare-ups. And now in Australia, I could be wrong, but I think most of the major cities in the country are currently in lockdown as I speak to you. We've had this second half of the year, it's just really kind of gone sideways because our vaccination rollout is so slow.
Wow.
So it's amazing because we were able to play to by the end, full houses of 900 people without masks, and it was safe to do so. And then what that produced is now there's this beautiful community online of people who love and adore the show, and who now through lockdowns are Zooming each other and doing like slideshow nights on Zoom about the show, and so I guess that's the influence of the pandemic on fangirls.
That's so fantastic. Have you thought of like trying to do a virtual show of it? Like manipulating it to where it could be like kind of you could perform some of the numbers on Zoom like they're talking to each other? I could see that kind of working.
Right. You know, there was like a lockdown concert that happened last year, and I edited together 2 of the numbers. Like we did a full, with the actors performed them down Zoom, I edited it together. And I'm not actually, I think there's like a ripped version of it on someone's Instagram. I'm not allowed to release it because the company paid for it and owns it. But I tried it and it was cute. And it was really cute because, I don't know, like it's, you know, it's so funny. And then it's like in the show, there's these huge, I call them Beyonce screens, like huge LCD screens, LED screens that have got all kinds of stuff on them through the show. There's one point, and in 2019, we're like, whoa, no one's ever seen this before, where you have a grid of faces singing, like you know, hundreds of faces just all singing along. But now, when it came back in 2020, everyone's like, oh, that's a Zoom call. That's just a Zoom call.
That's just so a Zoom.
Funny. Yeah.
Another day in Zoom.
Yeah, like in 2019, you know, this image would flash up, and it flashes up on these heartbeats in the show, like boom, boom, and you start to see the hundreds of fans in this, like light up this dark space, and you can hear the gasp. But in 2020, it was kind of this eye roll of like, oh yeah, I've seen that before. So it's quite funny. We'll have to get more inventive maybe in the future.
I was curious, when you were studying the different types of fangirl cultures through the decades, did you find any subtle differences in the fans of like the Beatles versus Backstreet Boys versus One Direction versus now BTS and their army?
In London, these 2 kids who were One Direction fans wanted to do this installation where during a certain song, everyone in the arena could create a rainbow flag with their phones. How do they do it? They print out a whole bunch of like a cellophane or colored paper of different colors, and they go and they drop on every seat in the stadium with a little note. Hey, during this song, put this in front of your phone's flashlight and wave it in the air, so that the whole stadium lights up to create a beautiful rainbow flag.
My God.
I know, but like, how are you going to get it on every seat in the stadium? So they put a call out on Twitter, and they found kids to to just sweep the place. In Boston, there's a similar example, but everyone would tweet which seating bank they were in, and then you would get sent back a colored tile for your phone screen to put as like the background for your phone for a certain song. Like just like stuff like that.
That's so creative.
So creative. I always love that example because it's really visual, but what I'm trying to speak to is the executive skills that fans have, and the way they can communicate with each other, organize together. I mean, BTS fans and their trolling of President Trump, like amazing, obsessed with that.
Oh, BTS, you are, I don't know if it's your team, I don't know if it's you, but like whatever is going on with your marketing team, they're doing a fantastic job with expanding their market and their viewership and their fans.
Well, I think I agree with that, but I think also credit to the fans. Like, I've spoken with lots of BTS fans who've explained to me about, I guess just like how welcoming and supportive that entire fandom seems to be. Like an example that jumps out, and I'm sure this is very well known, but like I was so amazed that there was this thing that had started where people started giving really expensive gifts to their idols. So they would like all get together, raise a bunch of money, and then buy expensive things for their idols. And then their idols started to say, hey, I get free clothes all the time, you don't need to buy me Louis Vuitton, donate to charity. And so now the actions for charity that BTS fans seem to do, it's amazing. Like I remember with the Australian bushfires last summer, I was invited to an all-day event fundraising for them, organized entirely by BTS fans at like this big location in Sydney. And I was so frustrated that I actually was out of the country that day. This clearly is pre-pandemic, because I was like, man, I want to go to an all-day fundraiser entirely thrown by BTS fans. Let's go. So yeah, I think it's a combo, right? It's marketing, but it's also the world's best street team.
It's a very interesting conversation, the impact of fans and their fandom.
I knew that with this piece, I ultimately wanted to create something that vindicated, particularly, I mean, look, it's called Fangirls. It's about people who are not fans and who are not girls. but my interest point was like how we talk about young women differently to young men. And ultimately that's the destination I wanted to get to. But on the way, I knew that I wanted to talk about the light and the dark. I knew I wanted to acknowledge the complexity in order to fairly arrive at a place which fundamentally is, it's so powerful if you can love someone without apology. Fans should not be ridiculed. Like, this behavior should be celebrated. And I think there are super patriarchal reasons that we deride people for openly expressing their love for things.
But I was going to mention what I also love that you touched upon in your TED Talk was a little bit about what is kind of wrong, what we do also to boys, in the sense of by 4, they're kind of taught not to cry. And not to get hysterical. And that's also damaging as well to the fangirl culture by doing that. And I was like, oh, that's such a good point.
Yeah, as I mentioned in my talk, I start this process being like, whoa, this is weird. I've got to find out more about fans. But then I realized all my own internalized misogynies. And I also realized that, I think like the fangirl shriek, a lot of people cower at the sound. And they're like, oh, and they see it as undignified and embarrassing. And then I met a vocal coach who completely changed the way I looked at it. And she made this point about this research she discovered, I mentioned in my talk, that suggested that 12 to 13 is the age that young women begin to perform their voices. So maybe they introduce like vocal fry for apathy, or breath to like perform maturity. But she made me guess, how old do you think men are when they start to perform their voice? And I thought 18, because the adage is men mature later. She said no, 4, because that's when we tell little boys, don't cry, don't scream, that's a girl sound. And so you'll have teenage boys who aren't able to squeal in the same way because their muscles just haven't developed to
have been suppressed. And saying
and I don't mention this in the talk, but someone once said to me, gosh, that makes sense, because have you ever, and this is totally anecdotal, right? It's like, have you ever seen a man cry and it looks like it hurts? Like they don't know how to do it? And I was like, I personally have.
Yeah, exactly. And I so enjoyed the aspect of you taking the light, for lack of a better term, because I'm a Star Wars geek, the light and the dark side of the fangirl experience with Eddie, as her mother calls her. And it's just like the extreme that she goes to for her passion and her fear and her insecurities. And I also I really enjoyed that nobody's really clearly just the good guy and nobody's clearly just the bad guy. There's a gray area in the way their friends are, because that's what you need to go through when you're in that transitional period of figuring out who you are,
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, what's interesting is that means a lot to me, because in creating the show, it's important to me. Like, people really hurt each other in this show, but they all are coming from a place, and they realize this by the end of, look, all these teenage girls are a comment on how we pump teenage girls with insecurities, and advertisers yell at them that they need to figure out how to be hot in order to figure out how to be sane. And it's just, thank you for saying that. There's in particular, one of her friends, Jules, is like horrendously mean throughout the show, and then you kind of discover what's really going on for Jules, and you're like, oh my gosh, of course, sweetie, it's okay. So that was really important to me. And another thing that's really important to me in this work is like Edna's relationship to her mother. So she's constantly, her mum is so annoying and constantly telling her like, I just want you to know that these boys are products and like, it's not real. Her mum doesn't get it. And then in Act 2, they have this I'm really proud of their journey and what it represents. The way that I've written her mum is kind of a tribute to my mum and saying, I'm sorry, I really put you through it when I was a teenager, and I probably should have listened to you more.
Which is also a Spice Girls song.
Oh my God, I didn't even notice that. Okay, intertextuality.
Yeah, no, they have the Spice Girls have a Mama song.
They absolutely do.
Yeah, no, it was, I was trying to also reflect while listening to your album, what I was like as in that fangirl phase. Cause I had to have been like, my fandom was more in like particular IPs. Like when I was in high school, it was the Lord of the Rings. I was obsessed with everything Lord of the Rings. And then secondary was Harry Potter. But when I was a kid, it was Power Rangers, it was Batman. It's still Batman. What am I saying? It was always Star Wars, but it was also, in terms of the fangirl aspect of like boy bands and girl bands, it was the Backstreet Boys and Spice Girls. And there was always, I was trying to reflect on, well, how was I when Jerry left the Spice Girls? Because that was a big deal when Jerry left. And that was around the time where I bought tickets. I only bought 2 tickets to see 2 concerts as a kid, and it was the Backstreet Boys and Spice Girls. And I, again, like your friend, I think it was Jules, that I don't want to go with my mom, it's lame. I was also of that mindset of like, I cannot go to these concerts and be myself, Mom. I need to go, like, have my cousin take me or something. She's like, fine, I don't even want to go anyway, so you win. I was like, yes, I win. But around the time, that's when Jerry left. And so I was going to see 4 girls instead of 5 girls. And I remember a part of me feeling a little cheated, because she had, I was so looking forward to seeing all of them. Now, Posh Spice was my favorite, and so she was still there. So it was okay. I was okay. But it was just like one of those things where
Jerry.
Yeah, it was Jerry. And Jerry was probably the most, I want to say, and this is not to be mean, but like, I was not ever a very, very skinny girl. And Jerry was kind of like the plumpier one, but she was also called Sexy Spice. And I loved that. That the heavier-ish one was also dubbed the sexy one as well. And it was a little disheartening that I wasn't going to be able to see that on stage. I wanted to like have.
I mean, they're all tiny, but yeah, she was voluptuous, right? And especially the way that her outfit was cut, she wasn't apologizing for it, and she did have that gumption, right? I think, if I'm not wrong, like, she's the reason they left their original management, and she staged a coup, and they all got in a car and like drove to another city to get her out of this deal. Like, she's, she's bullshit. She's great.
She was great.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be, that would be grief.
To go back to your show, Eddie, I love that she is likable, but she's also not perfect. Like, she is making extreme choices based out of passion and fear and insecurity. And that's what women are. We are complex. And sometimes we come out on top from that, and sometimes we don't. And I'm fine seeing both case scenarios if you give me a well-rounded individual.
Look, I really appreciate that, because you know what, like, while I was pitching Fangirls, which took years, like I was writing for 5 years, and across those 5 years, I started as, in my early 20s, this unproven fetus of a writer. You should bet on me. And so I pitched it to death, and a lot of feedback I would get from like powerful middle-aged men is like, your show is great, your problem is that your protagonist isn't likable and she's a bit crazy. And I was really kind of determined to prove to everyone that it's okay for female characters to exist in this way, to make huge mistakes and to make really selfish choices, and then to go, oh, I didn't know better. That was not the right reason to make it. Like, I feel like we see male characters do this and we go off for it. So I really appreciate that feedback, because I got a lot of notes over the years to tone her down, and I was like, absolutely not. I
wouldn't tone her down at all.
No, me as a teenage girl was the definition of not toned down. I could not have been more toned up. And so I really appreciate that feedback. And you know what, you asked as well, what's next for Fangirls? And it's so interesting to me, because I was in the first one, so couldn't see it. And the second tour, I wasn't in it, but got to watch it so much that now I have so many ideas for rewrites. And so,
oh, nice.
Right? So if it does go up in Australia or the UK, I'm really excited. Like, I'm excited for it to evolve. And that's something that's a privilege with a theatre show, is that you can do that till the cows come home.
Yeah, go for it. And I would not tone her down at all, because that's the journey she needs to go on. She's gotta. All right, Yve, where can we find Fangirls and you on the social channels?
Yay! Okay, well, on Instagram, really easy, Fangirls Musical, one word. Now, Twitter, someone else has the handle Fangirls Musical. If you know them, we're trying to get in touch with them, we're trying to get it. We would love that handle. But right now, we're Fangirls_tour on Twitter.
Okay.
And if I do say so, Twitter is where you want to go. That's where you're going to find peak chaos. We love it there. We're on TikTok even. We're even on TikTok.
Smart.
And then for me, I'm really easy to find. I'm Yve Blake, but it's spelled with a Y, Yve Blake. Yeah, that's where you find us.
Great. Well, it's been such a privilege to chat with you. I love fangirling out to different types of IP, especially to your musical. I hope we get to see a new version of it soon, because I'm very interested now in what kind of changes you would make to it.
Oh my gosh.
Oh
yeah.
my God, but
Hopefully
stay
one day we
tuned.
make it to the States. I feel like that would be after the UK, but that would be amazing.
Oh yeah, you definitely should follow like the Six the musical route. You know,
There
go
we go.
UK and then go. If you get to the UK, you get to Broadway.
Okay, I mean, if you say so, can't be wrong.
I say so. This is the way.
Perfect.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching Fangirl.com. I am Bevan, and we will see you guys next time.